worst kind of loneliness is being ignored by someone your heart still responds to. Believe it or not, my friends, when they don't call, when they don't message you for days, weeks, even months, it means something. And it might not mean what you've been telling yourself. It's not always confusion. It's not always that they're going through something. Sometimes it means exactly what you're afraid it does. And the way you respond to that silence, that defines everything about who you are becoming. So before you send that paragraph, before you double text, before you assume it's all in your head, pause. Because today we're about to break some illusions wide open. Before we dive in, do me a favor. Press that like button and subscribe to the channel because we're building something powerful here, something honest, something raw. And if you've ever been left staring at your phone, wondering what your worth really is to someone who used to talk to you every day, this is the place for you. Now stay with me. What I'm about to say might sting a little, but it might also save you from wasting years. Hey folks, imagine this. You're standing in a hallway filled with hundreds of doors. One of them was once wide open, inviting, warm, familiar. But now it's closed, no sound, no movement. You knock, nothing. You wait, still nothing. And instead of walking forward to explore the rest of the hallway, you sit there, staring at that one closed door, hoping it opens again. My friends, that's what you're doing when you keep waiting for someone to text back, to call, to come back into your life with answers. But here's the truth. Sometimes the silence is the answer, and those who know how to read it, they walk away stronger. You see, they're not just busy, they're not just going through a phase. If they can scroll on Instagram, post stories, laugh in their group chats, and still not reach out to you, that's not by accident, that's communication without words. And while you're refreshing your messages, overanalyzing what you said, asking yourself what you did wrong, they're out there living like you're already a memory. That's not because you're not worthy. That's because you haven't yet realized your worth doesn't come from their attention. Marcus Aurelius once said, "If you are distressed by anything external, the pain is not due to the thing itself, but to your estimate of it. And this you have the power to revoke at any moment." Let that hit. The pain you feel from their silence. It's not their silence that's hurting you. It's what you think it means. You think it means you're not enough, that something's wrong with you, that you need to try harder, do more, be more available, more understanding, more patient. No. The lie is that silence means you should prove your worth. But in reality, silence is the perfect time to remember it. Sometimes the biggest shift happens not when someone calls you, but when you stop needing them to. This moment, this void you feel, is a mirror. And it's not there to reflect how they feel about you. It's there to reflect how much you've forgotten to pour into yourself, because they might not be messaging you, but life is. And it's asking, are you going to wait around for someone who isn't waiting for you? Or are you going to become someone who doesn't flinch when they disappear? You've got two choices, my friends. Build yourself or beg for pieces. But only one of those paths will give you peace. So choose power, choose presence, choose purpose. Comment below, "I choose myself." And don't forget, hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and stay with me. Because what's coming next might just rewire the way you see everything. Number 1. Silence isn't absence. It's a message you haven't decoded yet. Just because someone isn't speaking to you doesn't mean they're not telling you something. It's funny, isn't it? How silence can feel louder than any argument, louder than any goodbye, when someone you care about just stops calling, stops messaging. It's not the quiet that breaks you, it's the meaning you attach to it. You start wondering, did I do something wrong? Are they mad at me? Did they find someone else? The mind begins spinning stories in the dark, trying to make sense of what they won't say out loud. And here's where most people crumble, not because of what's happening, but because they were never taught how to sit in the unknown without losing themselves. Picture this. You're out in the middle of a fog-covered ocean, no land in sight, no compass in hand. That's what their silence feels like. You keep paddling in circles, trying to find the shore, but there's nothing to guide you. No signal, no stars, just the eerie stillness of being left without answers. And instead of resting, instead of trusting the current, you panic, you splash harder, you yell into the void. And the truth is, it's not even about them anymore. It's about your fear of being unseen, unchosen, forgotten. But here's the hard truth you've been avoiding, my friends. Silence is not emptiness. It's full of meaning, full of intent, full of reflection. Just because they stopped calling doesn't mean nothing is being said. It just means you're not listening in the right frequency. Because silence has a language of its own, and only those who are still enough, strong enough, and clear enough can hear what it's actually saying. You see, we've been conditioned to believe that love always speaks, that interest always texts back, that if someone truly cares, they'll always find a way. That's a beautiful fantasy. But in the real world, people drift, people get comfortable, people move on silently because they lack the courage to confront. And so what do? They vanish. But here's the kicker. They don't vanish blindly. They vanish watching, observing, measuring what you'll do in the silence they left behind. And most people, they react. They panic text. They overshare. They spiral. Because they can't stand the idea of not being in control. Because in silence, all the old wounds resurface. Abandonment, rejection, insecurity. It all bubbles up when there's no noise to distract from it. But let me ask you something. What if the silence isn't a punishment, but a permission slip? A space carved out by the universe for you to pause, to stop proving, chasing, over-explaining, and to finally see yourself without their voice echoing in your mind. You've been trained to fill the void. You've been told that if they're silent, you should reach out first. That if there's distance, it's your job to close the gap. That if they're not responding, you must have said or done something wrong. That's the lie that's kept you emotionally handcuffed. But here's the truth. The person who cannot sit with silence will always be a slave to noise. And if your worth depends on someone replying, you're not in love, you're in addiction. Seneca once said, "We suffer more in imagination than in reality." And you're living proof of that. You suffer not because they're gone, but because of what you imagine their absence means. You build false stories on the foundation of silence, and each day you go without hearing from them, you reinforce the belief that you're not enough. But my friend, you were always enough. You've just been waiting for someone else to say it out loud before you believed it yourself. Let me flip the mirror. What if their silence isn't a reflection of your worth, but a reflection of their inability to handle your depth? What if they withdrew because they saw in you a kind of presence they couldn't match, a clarity they weren't ready to face? What if the silence isn't about you losing them, but about them losing the chance to know you fully? This is where your power lies, not in chasing a reply, but in learning to stand tall in the quiet, in using their absence as a reminder to return to yourself, in understanding that sometimes silence is the only way life can get your attention, because if they texted, if they called, if they explained, you'd still be spinning your energy around their orbit. But now, the universe has placed you in front of a blank canvas. What are you going to paint? This won't be easy. I'm not going to lie to you. There will be days when you check your phone first thing in the morning, hoping they changed their mind. Nights when you scroll through old conversations just to feel something familiar. But that pain? That's not weakness. That's detox. That's your soul letting go of false hope. And with each moment you resist the urge to reach out, you become stronger. With each day you hold your frame, you build value, and eventually they feel it, they sense it, and whether they come back or not, you'll be different, you'll be grounded, you'll be unshakable. So next time they don't call, next time the messages stay silent, don't panic, don't assume the worst. Instead, pause, breathe. Say to yourself, this is not rejection, this is redirection. And then write it in the comments. I hear the message in the silence. Show yourself. Show the world around you. You're not just someone waiting to be chosen. You're becoming someone impossible to ignore. Stay with me, because what's coming next will reveal exactly why their silence is actually the beginning of your transformation. Number 2, their silence is testing your frame. The strongest people are not those who show strength in front of us, but those who win battles we never see. So now that you're starting to see the silence isn't random, what if I told you it's also not passive? Believe it or not, my friends, when they don't call, when they stop messaging for days, when they suddenly pull back without a word, it's not always because they've forgotten you. Sometimes it's because they're testing you. Silently, subtly, strategically. And no, I'm not saying they sat down with a checklist like, let's see how much distance he can tolerate before he cracks. But energetically, emotionally, oh, they're watching closely. You think no one's paying attention, but they are, and the more quiet they go, the louder your reactions become, and that's what they're studying, not your words, not your emojis, not your voice notes, your frame, your emotional foundation, how you behave when the person you wanted validation from disappears into thin air. Do you collapse? Do you chase? Do you lose your sense of direction the moment their presence fades? Let's get real. Picture this. A man stands in front of a mirror. He's been messaging someone he deeply cares about, consistently, warmly, patiently. And one day she stops responding. No fight, no explanation, just distance. Days pass. His fingers itch. His heart races every time he opens his phone. He types, deletes, types again. Wonders if he should just check in to see if she's okay. His whole emotional world starts orbiting around one thing, the silence. He's no longer leading his day. His day is leading him, and that right there is where he loses. Because what she's observing isn't if he'll message again, it's why he does. Is he reaching from confidence or from fear? Is he holding his ground, or is he emotionally drowning the second she disappears? Because most people can pretend to be calm in front of others, but the truth is always exposed in what you do when no one's clapping, when no one's validating, when no one's responding. This is where frame gets tested, not when everything is flowing, not when the connection is mutual and the replies are instant. No. Frame is tested when you're left in the dark with no flashlight. And you're asked, can you still walk in a straight line? And here's what most folks never realize. Silence is not just a void, it's a mirror. And in that mirror, your unresolved wounds show up first. That need for approval, it surfaces. That fear of abandonment, loud. That compulsion to fix what isn't yours to fix, it kicks in like an alarm. And if you don't know who you are without their attention, their silence becomes the judge, jury, and executioner of your self-worth. Now let's break the lie wide open. The world told you that when someone pulls back, you should do more, be sweeter, be more attentive, send something thoughtful, stay on her radar. That's the lie, that's the poison, because the more you chase the ghost, the more you become invisible to yourself. And the truth is, you don't win people's respect by being reactive, you win it by being immovable. Marcus Aurelius wrote, You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength. That's the core of this section. That's what silence forces you to confront. Your emotional ownership, your inner calm. Because they're not going to spell it out for you. They're not going to text, "Hey, just wanted to see if you'd lose your balance if I pulled back a little." Nah. They'll just go quiet and then wait. You see, when someone goes silent, especially someone who once showed interest, they're not just disappearing, they're measuring. Can you handle space without spiraling? Can you remain composed when the game isn't going your way? Can you hold on to yourself without holding on to them? This is why some men fall into emotional debt, because they think love means constant presence. But real presence isn't in how fast you respond. It's in how stable you remain when no one's responding at all. And if you fail that test, if you send 5 texts in a row, if you vent your insecurity hoping for comfort, if you panic and post stories to get their attention, you've just shown your hand. You've revealed that your peace wasn't real, it was conditional. Let me ask you something deep. Why is it so hard to do nothing? Why does sitting still in silence feel like punishment? I'll tell you why. Because most people have mistaken stillness for weakness. But here's the secret. Stillness is the ultimate form of power. Only the strong can wait without losing their mind. Only the rooted can go unacknowledged and still grow. And when you show that kind of self-possession, they feel it. Even if they don't reply, they notice. They'll think, why isn't he chasing? Why hasn't he double-messaged? Why does he look even more focused now? That curiosity, that's your silent power. Because now they're the ones wondering. And you're not even trying to be mysterious. You're just choosing peace over performance, mission over madness. Let's flip the metaphor. 2 trees in a storm. One shallow-rooted, swaying violently, cracking under pressure. The other deeply rooted, barely moving, calm, commanding. The storm doesn't change, but one of them survives because of what it built underground. That's your emotional frame. That's what's being tested every time someone goes quiet on you. So here's what I want you to do right now. Breathe. Realize you're not broken. You're just being shown where your foundation needs strengthening, and if their silence is shaking you, good. That means it's time to build something stronger than their attention, something unshakable. Comment below. I don't fold in silence. Say it, show it, live it. Because the next time they test your frame, you won't panic. You'll pass. And when that happens, everything changes. Stay with me. The next part will expose the exact reason why most people react wrong in silence and how you will rise above it. Number 3, most people fill the silence with insecurity. You won't. The need for attention is the enemy of power. Now let's get brutally honest, my friends. When they don't message you, when the call never comes, when their last good night turns into days of nothing, you feel it, deep, like a cut that doesn't bleed but still stings every time you breathe. And most people, when faced with that silence, don't rise, they react. They don't reflect, they reach. Not from a place of strength, but from fear. Fear of being forgotten, fear of being replaced, fear of being not enough. That's when the spiral begins. They panic text, double message, screenshot old chats, rewatch old videos. They post things just hoping the person will see it. They talk to friends looking for signs, clues, answers, and they convince themselves they're just trying to fix it. But what they're really doing is trying to fill the silence with something that feels like worth. Because when someone goes quiet on you, your insecurities scream. And if you're not grounded, if you're not disciplined, if you haven't trained your identity to stand without needing constant confirmation, then you start breaking in places you didn't even know were fragile. Let me paint it for you. A person who used to message you good morning, good night, all day long, suddenly they vanish. You check your phone before your feet hit the floor. Nothing. Midday. Nothing. Night. Still nothing. And instead of pulling your energy back and anchoring into yourself, what do most people do? They post something funny, hoping to trigger a reaction, or worse, they send a just checking in message that drips with hidden panic. And here's the real truth. They don't want the person to respond out of love. They want them to respond so they can stop feeling like they're losing. But my friends, needing a reply to feel whole, that's emotional poverty. That's placing your peace in the hands of someone who already walked away with your attention. And that's not connection, that's compulsion. Why do people do this? Because they were never taught how to be with themselves. Because silence reminds them of childhood rejection, abandonment, betrayal. Because silence becomes the stage where all their unresolved wounds come out to perform. And instead of sitting with those feelings and facing them, they run. Right back into distraction. Right back into the fantasy that maybe, just maybe, one more message will fix it all. But let's kill that lie now. If someone doesn't reply, and you send another message and another, what are you really saying? Please give me enough of a response so I don't have to face the part of me that's terrified of being ignored. And that, right there, is the weakness the silence was exposing the whole time. Epictetus said, "It's not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters." And this moment, the one you're in right now, isn't about what they're doing. It's about what you do with the space they left behind. Most people panic. Most people reach for their phones like a lifeline. Most people let their peace crumble the second someone else's attention is removed. But you're not most people, because the person who learns to hold stillness without slipping into anxiety becomes unshakable. The person who learns to observe their thoughts without acting on every emotional impulse becomes rare. And in a world addicted to noise, distraction, and validation, rarity becomes power. So let me offer you a new way. When they go silent, don't respond by turning up your volume. Respond by turning inward. When your mind starts screaming, "Maybe I should say something," say nothing. Breathe, observe, feel the discomfort, and then realize it's just emotion, it's just energy, and it's not stronger than you. Here's something wild. What if the silence wasn't about you at all? What if their distance was never your responsibility? What if the space between the last message and now wasn't a void you were supposed to fill, but a door you were supposed to walk through? Because silence doesn't mean you failed. It means you've been handed a choice. The kind that separates men from boys, the kind that builds discipline, the kind that carves strength into your identity. When most people chase, beg, and explain, they dilute their value, and even if the person responds, they've already seen behind the curtain. They've seen your fear, your instability, your emotional dependence. And once they see that, the power dynamic is gone. But when you hold back, when you don't react, when you become a mountain while everyone else is trying to be a wave, something shifts. They feel it. They feel your stillness. They feel your lack of need. And that creates mystery. And mystery always carries more weight than messages. Let me ask you something real. If they never texted again, would your mission still continue? Would you still get up tomorrow with focus? Would your gym time still happen? Would your purpose still burn in your chest? Or would everything collapse because someone didn't send you a blue bubble? If the answer is collapse, then this silence is showing you where you're still building your identity on external pillars. And that's not weakness, that's awareness. That's the starting point of your transformation. So the next time the silence hits, Remember, don't fill it with insecurity. Fill it with direction. Fill it with discipline. Fill it with self-respect so loud that their absence becomes irrelevant. Because the only person you should be chasing right now is the version of you that doesn't flinch when left unread. Write this in the comments right now. I am louder than their silence. Let the world see it. Let your future self see it. This is how you reclaim your power, not by reacting, but by rising. Stay with me, because next we're going to confront the illusion most people hold on to, the lie that if someone isn't reaching out, it's just a phase. What if it's not? What if it's a truth you've been avoiding? We're about to uncover it. Number 4. If they haven't called, it's because they don't have to. The harshest truths are the ones we whisper to ourselves but pretend not to hear. Now, I know this is going to sting a bit, but I didn't come here to sugarcoat the truth. I came to set some of you free from a fantasy that's been eating your time, your confidence, and your peace. So here it is. If they haven't called, it's because they don't feel like they need to. If they haven't messaged in days, weeks, months, it's not because they lost their phone. It's not because they've been thinking too hard about what to say. It's because your absence hasn't disturbed their rhythm, and I know that hurts. But pain is often just clarity that arrived late. Let me paint the picture. You used to talk daily. You shared inside jokes, good mornings, good nights. You were part of their routine. And now, silence. Ghost town. Nothing but your own thoughts echoing back at you. And instead of letting that be the answer, you start creating excuses for them. Maybe they're just overwhelmed. Maybe they're testing me. Maybe they still care but don't know how to show it. But what if none of that is true? What if the real reason they haven't called is because they're not worried about losing you? Now take a deep breath with me. I know it feels heavy. I know some part of you wants to slam the door on this idea, because accepting it would mean letting go of the last thread of hope you've been white-knuckling for weeks. But here's the thing, this isn't about hate or revenge or bitterness. It's about finally seeing clearly so you can stop waiting, stop wondering, and start walking again. You see, the truth is simple. People make time for what they value. Period. No matter how busy they are, no matter how complicated life gets, if someone wants you in their life, they'll show you. Not perfectly, not always with fireworks, but they'll find a way. A 5-second text, a missed call returned, a thinking of you message, something. But when someone doesn't reach out, they're communicating loudly. And sometimes the absence of effort is effort. It's the effort to slowly fade you out without having the courage to say goodbye. Let's break this lie once and for all. Silence isn't confusion, it's clarity. It's just not the kind you wanted. There's a quote that says, "Don't let someone treat you like you're hard to love." And yet, so many of us stick around in silence, hoping that if we're just patient enough, if we give them space, they'll remember us. But here's the deeper truth. They haven't forgotten you. They just aren't moved by your absence. And if that doesn't ignite something in you, it should. Imagine giving someone the best of your energy, your attention, your loyalty, and they treat your absence like background noise. No urgency, no follow-up, just indifference wrapped in silence. That's not love. That's convenience. That's comfort. That's someone who enjoyed your presence but doesn't feel any discomfort now that it's gone. And here's where it gets real tricky. The silence keeps you hoping. It keeps you on the edge of maybe. And that maybe becomes your prison. You don't move forward. You don't reach out to others. You don't fully let go. You stay stuck in emotional limbo, feeding a fantasy that's being kept alive by your own refusal to accept reality. But I promise you this. Once you stop begging silence to speak, once you stop needing them to call to feel valid, you begin to shift. You begin to detach. And detachment isn't apathy. It's clarity wrapped in strength. It's knowing you deserve effort without having to beg for it. It's knowing you bring value even when someone else doesn't acknowledge it. They didn't call because they didn't feel they had to. And that doesn't make you worthless. It just makes them unqualified to have that access to you again. And the moment you accept that, you stop spinning. You stop questioning your every word, every message you sent. You stop replaying conversations looking for the moment it all went wrong, because maybe it didn't go wrong. Maybe it just wasn't right from the start. Let me tell you a hard but freeing truth. The ones who care about you will make it known, and the ones who don't will make you wonder. And you deserve better than a question mark. You deserve clarity, energy, presence, consistency, not breadcrumbed attention, not ghost-written love stories with no endings. You're not hard to love. You're just no longer available for people who love you when it's easy and disappear when it requires effort. So what do you do now? You stop checking. You stop hoping. You stop needing their call to feel validated, and you start building. You get up earlier. You get focused. You make your bed, make your money, make your body stronger. You fill your own silence with mission, not misery, because the person who doesn't need the call becomes the call. You become the one whose silence speaks volumes, the one they remember in the middle of the night, not because you begged, but because you disappeared with dignity. Write this in the comments right now. If they don't call, I don't crawl. Let it echo, let it hit, let it rise up in your chest until it drowns every excuse you've ever made for people who couldn't even type 2 words. Stay with me, because in the next section, we're going even deeper. We'll talk about what their silence is really revealing, not about them, but about you, because that's where the real transformation begins. Number 5, your reaction to their silence reveals your identity. A man is not what he says when the world is watching. He's who he becomes when no one replies. Let's talk about what silence really does, not to them, to you. Because their silence, their absence, their ghosting, it's not just empty space. It's a magnifying glass. It zooms in on your patterns, your self-talk, your beliefs. And if you really want to know who you are, don't look at how you act when they're loving you, praising you, texting you non-stop. No, look at who you become the moment they stop. That's the real version of you, the unfiltered one, the one who's either rooted in self-worth or crumbling without it. Let me ask you something, and don't flinch. When they stop messaging, do you immediately assume it's your fault? Do you start replaying everything you said? Do you try to find the moment it went wrong? Because if you do, that's not reflection. That's self-abandonment disguised as logic. That's insecurity wearing the mask of trying to understand. And that habit, that compulsion to take responsibility for other people's silence, that's what's revealing more about you than it ever will about them. Imagine this. 2 people are left on read. One stares at the screen, heart pounding, refreshing the chat every 10 minutes, slowly spiraling into, "What did I do wrong?" The other sees the silence, feels the sting, pauses, and then goes straight into their schedule, their discipline, their mission. One becomes reactive, the other becomes recentered. One hands away their power, the other reclaims it. And the difference between them? Identity. Your reaction to their silence is the clearest window into your self-image. If you fall apart when they pull back, if you panic when you're not being acknowledged, it means you are using their presence to patch a hole in your own self-belief. And when they take that presence away, the hole shows. That's not weakness, that's exposure. That's life saying, look, this is the part of you that still thinks you're only valuable when someone else confirms it. Seneca once said, If you live in harmony with nature, you will never be poor. If you live according to what others think, you will never be rich. And that's what we're talking about here. Emotional wealth, emotional strength, the kind that doesn't evaporate the moment someone stops clapping for you. Let's break the lie you've been telling yourself. You think if they stop talking to you, it means something's wrong with you. But here's the truth they never taught us. Not everyone who pulls away does so because of you. Some people leave because of their own instability, their own confusion, their own unresolved pain. And yet we make it our fault. We rewrite our worth based on how consistently someone else shows up. But that's the trap. That's the loop. Because if you base your identity on how someone else treats you, you will always be a puppet to their attention, up when they love you, down when they don't. And let me tell you, real strength, the kind that actually makes people respect you, is built in the moments when you could beg and don't, when you could spiral but you breathe, when you could message them to ease the discomfort and instead you return to yourself. That's not game playing, that's self-respect in action. That's clarity saying, if you can go silent, so can I, not out of spite, but because I don't chase what doesn't recognize value. Now look, this doesn't mean you won't feel it. Of course you will. You're human. It's okay to feel the sting, the sadness, the confusion. But what matters isn't the emotion, it's what you do with it. Do you use it to build your story, or do you let it build you? Let's get metaphorical for a second. Picture your identity like a skyscraper. The higher it goes, the more stable the foundation has to be. But if your foundation is built on their responses, their approval, their affection, then the moment they go silent, your building shakes, your windows crack, your structure sways. But if your foundation is built on purpose, on clarity, on daily discipline, then their silence is just background noise, a gust of wind against a building that knows it was designed to withstand storms. You want to be unshakable? Then you need to stop tying your identity to the noise level in someone else's life. And let's not ignore this either. Some people go silent just to see what you'll do. They pull back, not because they've lost interest, but because they're trying to measure yours. But here's where power flips, when you don't react, when you stay rooted, when you don't play the role they expected. That's when they feel the shift. That's when they start to ask, wait, why isn't this bothering them? Why are they still so focused, so calm, so untouchable? That's the moment your silence becomes louder than their distance. And the truth is, that version of you, the one who doesn't flinch, is already inside you. He's just buried under conditioning, under trauma, under years of being told that your worth is up for debate, depending on who texts back. But not anymore. Not after today. Because from now on, you don't let silence shape your worth. You let it reveal your work, your growth, your resilience. So write this in the comments right now. My silence is strength. Let it be your anthem. Let it be your reminder. Because if you can hold your power in silence, you can hold it anywhere. Stay with me. Because next, we're going to strip away another illusion, the one that's been feeding your fantasy and stalling your freedom. It's time to talk about the danger of hoping they'll come back, and what happens when you finally stop needing that hope to move forward. Number 6. You don't beg for attention, you command energy through stillness. Real power is felt, not forced. The most magnetic presence is the one that doesn't chase, it attracts by being. Let's make something very clear, my friends. You don't have to dance louder, shout longer, or bleed emotionally just to be seen. You don't have to over-explain, overthink, or overcompensate just because someone went silent on you. You are not a circus act performing for their approval. You are not an echo hoping for a voice to bounce off of. You are the sound. You are the energy. And when you finally realize that, everything changes. Most people were taught that love means action. And yes, love does act, but desperation. That acts louder. It's not love when your presence becomes a performance for attention. It's fear wearing perfume. And fear repels the very thing you're trying to attract. When someone pulls away and your first instinct is to chase, to fix, to rush in and do something, that's not power. That's panic dressed as effort. And whether they admit it or not, people can feel that panic. They smell it in your tone. They sense it in your double texts. They read it between the lines of your just checking in messages. You don't command respect by reacting. You command it by remaining composed, remaining centered, remaining rooted in your value, whether someone acknowledges it or not. Let me give you a picture. Two men feel the same silence. One starts pacing, posting vague quotes, stalking stories, scanning every line of conversation like a detective solving a crime that doesn't exist. He texts, deletes, texts again. His energy is reaching, pulling, begging silently for a response, for a sign. And the other? He notices the silence, yes. He feels the distance, but he doesn't flinch. He keeps his routine. He works out. He locks in on his goals. He remains a gravitational force. And while the first man becomes noise, the second becomes mystery. One repels. The other pulls without moving. That's what stillness is. Not silence as in doing nothing, but emotional stillness. A level of internal power so anchored that you don't need to react to feel in control, because you already are. And the irony, that's exactly what triggers attraction. That's what makes people start to think twice. Why hasn't he reached out? Why is he so calm? Why isn't he breaking like I thought he would? You become the question instead of the one endlessly seeking answers. Stillness, in this sense, is like the ocean at dawn, powerful, deep, unbothered, and yet everyone who passes it stops and stares, not because it's chasing their gaze, but because it simply exists in its fullness. That's the kind of energy you need to start carrying. Because when your peace no longer depends on someone's presence, your presence becomes unshakable. Here's where the lie gets shattered. You were told that if someone pulls back, you need to keep the connection alive. But what if I told you the only connection worth keeping is the one where you don't have to beg to be remembered? You don't need reminders when someone truly values you. You don't need to prove your place in someone's life when you already belong there. And if they don't see that, you don't fight to stay. You rise and let them feel what your absence actually means. Because trust me, stillness is not invisible. In fact, it's louder than any rant, any confession, any emotional outburst. People feel your energy when you no longer offer it freely. They feel your pull when you stop pushing. They feel your presence even more when you stop trying to be present in their world and start becoming fully present in your own. And let's talk about boundaries, because some of you confuse emotional availability with emotional sacrifice. You think being open means being endlessly available. But a man or woman of value doesn't overextend. They discern. They measure where their energy flows. They don't water gardens that never bloom. They don't keep knocking on doors that have already been locked from the inside. They move, not out of spite, but because their peace is too expensive to keep spending on what doesn't grow them. Marcus Aurelius said, "Waste no more time arguing what a good man should be. Be one." That applies here. Don't waste time convincing them you're valuable. Be valuable. Don't waste energy explaining why they should stay. Become someone whose absence speaks for itself. And this isn't just about dating or relationships. This is life. In business, in friendships, in family dynamics. You want to be respected. Start by respecting your own boundaries. You want to be desired? Start by desiring peace over chaos. You want to be unforgettable? Start by being so aligned, so disciplined, so grounded that your energy lingers longer than your words ever could. You're not invisible when you go quiet. You're just learning how to shine without screaming. Now, I want you to write this in the comments right now. I command energy through stillness. Say it out loud. Write it. Breathe it in. Because when you really embody that, you'll never feel the need to chase attention again. You'll become the person people watch in silence, wondering how they didn't see your worth sooner. Stay with me, because what's next will challenge one of the biggest lies people cling to after silence, the fantasy that they're just figuring things out. We're about to strip that illusion bare. Let's go. Number 7. Letting go of the illusion. They're coming back. Heals you faster. The most painful prison is the one we build out of hope. Let's cut through the noise, my friends. Let's take a scalpel to the fantasy that's been silently bleeding you dry. Because here's the truth no one wants to admit out loud. The hardest part isn't that they're gone. It's that you're still holding the door open, not with your hands, but with your heart, with that whisper in the back of your mind that says, maybe one day they'll realize what they lost and come back. That whisper, that's the illusion, and that illusion is killing your growth. It's subtle, but it's there. Every time you check their profile to see if they're online, every time you leave a post up just a little longer, hoping they see it, every time you convince yourself that their silence is just temporary, that they're just confused, that once they figure things out, they'll come back with an apology and finally give you the closure you've been praying for. But let's get honest. What if they're not confused? What if they're not coming back? And what if your addiction to that fantasy is the very thing blocking you from becoming who you were meant to be without them? See, when someone walks away from you and doesn't look back, not for a day, not for a week, not for months, they're not searching for answers, they're living in their decision. And when you stay stuck in hope, you're not waiting, you're wasting energy, wasting months of healing, wasting the opportunity to become so powerful that their absence becomes irrelevant. But we don't like to hear that, because hope, for many, is the last rope they're clinging to above emotional rock bottom. What if they just need time? What if they're hurting too? What if they miss me and just don't know how to say it? And you wrap your identity around those what-ifs like a security blanket, but it's not keeping you warm, it's keeping you stuck. And the longer you wait, the deeper you sink into the illusion that someone else's return will complete you. But here's the Stoic slap of reality. You are not incomplete just because they left. Their departure didn't break you. It revealed where you had holes to patch, and their silence, that wasn't a punishment, that was a pause, one meant for you to fill with purpose, not fantasy. Let me tell you something that might sting before it heals. If they were meant to return, they would have. If they truly missed you in a way that aligned with your worth, you wouldn't be chasing closure, you'd already have it. And if they did come back, ask yourself, would they be coming back to the you who grew in their absence, or the you who never moved on, who waited, who hoped, who stayed emotionally frozen in time? Because you don't want to be remembered, you want to be respected, and respect isn't earned by sitting at the door of silence, begging for a knock that may never come. It's earned when you close that door, turn around, and walk straight into your mission, into your discipline, into your self-worth. Think of it like this. Holding on to hope that someone will return is like carrying a phone with no battery, checking it over and over, waiting for a message, knowing deep down it's dead, But convincing yourself it might buzz any second, that's not strength, that's avoidance, that's fear of being alone dressing up as loyalty. But here's the most beautiful truth of all. You don't need them to come back to find peace. Peace isn't in their message. Peace is in your mindset. It's in knowing you loved fully. It's in knowing you showed up honestly. It's in knowing you now get to redirect all that energy toward building something they may never even get to witness. And that's okay. Because healing doesn't happen when they return. It happens when you stop needing them to. When you delete the last message, not out of anger, but out of alignment. When you see their silence not as rejection, but as redirection. When you stop asking, what if they come back, and start asking, what am I building so powerfully that if they do, they won't even recognize me anymore? That's when everything shifts. That's when your days stop revolving around notifications. That's when your energy becomes magnetic again. Not because you're proving something, but because you've remembered who you were before they forgot. And who you're becoming now, that person doesn't wait. That person chooses. So if you're still hoping for them to return, I'm not here to judge you. I'm here to challenge you, to invite you to step out of the emotional waiting room and into your future. Because the longer you wait for them, the longer you postpone you. Write this in the comments right now. I let go of the waiting. Say it for the version of you that's still looking at that phone. Say it for the future you who needs your full focus. Say it so the universe hears that you're done begging life to bring something back. When you've got something far greater to walk toward, and if this message struck a nerve, share it with someone else who's been stuck in silence too long. Hit that like button. Subscribe. Because the world doesn't need more people waiting to be chosen. It needs more people rising into who they were meant to be, regardless of who looked back. This isn't the end of your story. This is the chapter where you finally stop waiting and start becoming.